So, okay, it's going to take a few minutes here. I'm just talking about Medicare. Anyone who would like to chime in is welcome to chime in related to this Medicare discussion. And so what this is related to is people who are receiving Medicare, and it's going to be Medicaid as well, because it says, how do you continue with Medicare and Medicaid without restricting people's access? And so what they're talking about is inflation in the overall program. And so when they talk, there's other people who will word it differently, and they just tell people that they have to, they're telling them that, actually, I think it's the politicians, they play that game where they blame the government, or they have someone else blaming someone else when it's their own fault for inflation. But they're always talking about how they're going to have to raise the age limit because this fund is getting smaller. But what they fail to do is tell people that it's actually inflation. The prices are just getting more expensive in medical overall. And so they've had this discussion about drug prices getting more expensive. No, the insurance premiums are just getting more expensive too. So what they do is they trick people, and they will lower the cost of medicine and things for a little bit, and then they just raise it back up again. That's all they do. So the system is failing within Wall Street with what's going on. That system overall is failing, and everybody knows that things are failing with the government right now because of the fact that it just isn't working. And so how do you continue giving people medical? So we've all paid into Medicare and Medicaid in some capacity, but yet then we don't get to use it because of inflation. So the private sector is just raising prices to make insurance premiums more expensive. This means that the insurance companies are basically stealing money from the American public. So they've turned Medicare into a Ponzi scam, and what they do is they blame the American government for it when the private sector. Okay, thank you for liking. Get your friends, and if you can, get your friends to like and subscribe too, because these issues are important for everybody. And sometimes I think that if the whole planet Earth is going in this direction with all the continents, I believe that other countries are going to have to be concerned about this issue too. This explains why you guys have inflation in other countries, because it's the private sector and companies like Wall Street who are profiteering and price gouging off of you. So America's problems probably are problems in other countries too, where they just raise prices higher just because they can. And so this is explaining. So here in the United States, we pay into something when we work. Now, when we don't work, we don't pay into it. And so I don't know how they pay people like Medicaid and stuff like that, and welfare. They just get it because they don't make enough money. So I'm not sure exactly how that works, that people just get something for nothing. But then everybody else who has participated in being part of the working class then pays into something and then just doesn't get it, because basically that's what they're saying. And so they're doing this thing where they tried to privatize the military. And it sounds to me like they're still doing it to various degrees, that they're privatizing the military care. And I think that's probably why a lot of the Veterans Administration areas have closed their doors. There are quite a few of them that are open, but I have become aware that in some places they've made people drive further to get in touch with their VA person. They have to drive further because their VA person is further away and from where they're at, or they moved them or something for some reason. And so they still have VA people for the Veterans Administration. And so I came across a story related to Florida earlier, and it kind of alarmed me because there was this guy. I think there's a lot of fraudulent attorneys who set up on the internet, and they're scammers, and a lot of them are out of Florida. And so it was that guy that by the last name of his name was Richard Hurley. And so I have concerns that one was a fraud, because it sounded like the one closed its doors And then they created another website of him by himself, and they dropped the other person that was with him. And then he just created a whole new thing. And, so veterans have to look out for scam websites, because it very well could be that that person wasn't on the up and up related to helping veterans. Because I'm thinking, if you're a veteran and you need help, why should you have to go to an attorney? Why do you need to contact an attorney? Can't you go straight to the VA and talk to someone at the VA? That's what I'm thinking. And so Medicare and even VA care affects everyone. It absolutely affects everyone. So there's a lot of veterans who don't consider themselves veterans. They should contact the VA. Contact the VA and get the help that you need. Don't listen to no attorneys. Just contact the VA and see what they have to say related to you getting some assistance or something, because things have changed for the veterans. They're trying to make things better for the veterans. Why are you asking me what I'm saying? Don't you understand what I'm saying? You don't understand what I'm saying? Why are you asking me what I'm saying? So the veterans, there's care eligible and available to them. And it's for short-term people who didn't serve a long time in the United States military. So, I know there's a lot of men who have served in the military, and they've said things like that they don't think that they deserve benefits, or they didn't think anything's eligible to them because they were short term. But that's not true. There is things that are eligible that's available to them that I believe has been made available to them that wasn't in the past. Now, and another thing too, their medical care, it will be more expensive because of inflation. VA care will be more expensive. I don't know what they get. Even military care, if it's privatized, and they have been sending a lot of military to off-base facilities, which is going to be more expensive all around for the military. They're going to have to pay a higher price by sending them off post, because they don't have the level care for a lot of things on the military bases, so they have to send them to another hospital that has a higher level of care for them to meet their needs. And so this is going to be the same thing for veterans' families then who move to other parts of the United States where care may not be available. Then they're going to have to drive longer, which that adds, you think about that adds to their costs. And so Medicare does not pay for everything. And so it's my understanding that everything with Medicare is getting more expensive. It's the private sector, it's Wall Street that is actually raising the prices. The Affordable Health Care Act, why is it called affordable when it's not affordable? That's the same thing as the Inflation Reduction Act. Why is it called inflation reduction when inflation and things are still getting more expensive? And they come out of the Democrats. Affordable Health Care Act came out of the Democrats. Things got more expensive. Inflation Reduction Act came out of the Democrats, and inflation has gotten more expensive. So this means that something is not quite, well, what they're doing is they're not creating policy for all of the American public. And they seem to not understand this, that the American public and the veterans and everybody is asking for things for everyone, not just a few people, not just for when it's voting season and when they want to get someone elected. That's not what we want. That's not what we need. We need someone who is actually going to be interested in the American public and at a grassroots level. We're not interested in famous people. We're not interested in someone going on TV to spout their mouth off on C-SPAN. And that's what a lot of these celebrity politicians, there's a lot of them. I see the celebrity politicians. I get it. Nancy Pelosi was one of them. What's her face? Marsha Blackburn or Blackstone, whatever her name is. She looks like one of them. AOC is a celebrity politician. So when they go in and they get in there right away, they actually are just in there just to be in there for their 15 minutes of fame and be famous. So it's actually, they're the problem. They're a big part of the problem. Even Gavin Newsom, when they go on TV and they just blab their mouth all the time, So why should and so the American public is suffering because of California right now. All the celebrities have been in California. That's where they've had them at. So that's why they're called, liberals, because the celebrities are out of Los Angeles. And so TV has always been pop out of Los Angeles mainly. There is quite a bit that has been out of New York, but I think New York is easier to kind of go in different directions than California is. And so there's people who truly just believe that with California, that it's only just going to be for part of the state. And so therefore the policy of the parties are the problem. The parties don't set policy, the politicians do. But the parties, the way they run them, is they've been running them for an agenda to get the politicians elected. And it's taking them millions, if not billions of dollars to get the politicians elected into office. Now, why should it have to cost that much money? Because that means that the money is running the country, and it's not helping the American public. And so that means that advertising. And so we see what kind of president we have right now, just a blabbermouth. And that's all he's doing is a blathering idiot. He's a big blabbermouth and nothing is getting done. It's just gerrymandering and filibustering out of the president. And I thought the president was supposed to facilitate things for all people, not just himself. But we basically have a president right now who is facilitating things just for himself, not the American public. But this president actually will facilitate things. Oh, well, we're going to make sure this, and this is for the veterans. And so it's like, okay, we're still in this circular potato salad of potato word salad is basically what it is, So the politicians have complained about that. They said they don't like word salads, but they do it all the time. The politicians use word salads all the time. And so when we think of Medicare and Medicaid, the private sector is causing inflation. The Fed is running hot. The Fed is running a hot inflation, and that's what I'm calling it. It's a hot potato inflation because, or the Fed is just saying that we have inflation because that's what we have. And there's nothing the Fed can do to control it. Now, well, the interest rates, the Fed will keep interest rates higher so that they get back more money. Well, that's going back into the banks, though, but the American public is getting punished in the process, even though I think the punishment is intended for the corporations, but the corporations, in turn, are passing the costs off to the American public. This is what we're getting, and I don't know if they understand that or not. So we're being punished by the corporations. Now, granted, it appears that a lot of corporations are going out of business because of the fact that they're running hot too. So what they're doing is they're just increasing prices on the American public. So they're increasing prices on the American public for housing, for rent, and for hotel expenses. And that's because that's where they can make the money. So they make the money in those areas because they're forcing, and then they're passing the costs off to the American public. And so as they raise prices higher, they're hurting the American public. They just raise the prices higher, and then they hurt the American public. So how these financial people are explaining it on YouTube is they're saying that they doubled the price of housing during COVID. They said now it's dropping. Well, see, legacy media, that's what they'll fixate on then, is things are dropping, it looks good. Well, it's like, no. When you drive a car off of a car lot, it depreciates in value right away. Now, cars have gotten more expensive. So when you buy a house, shouldn't it depreciate right away? So why is it the value of the house has to maintain and go up higher? There's only a very few people who benefit from that, and that's rich people. And that's people who buy up a whole lot of houses and flip houses and sell them for a profit. That's the very few people who benefit from that. No one else does. If you live in your house your whole life, if you are lucky and you're able to buy a house and live in it your whole life, you did probably benefit in some way with an investment in buying that house because of the fact that you bought a house and then you own the house. And you probably did benefit in the house as an investment that way long term. Then you have a house to live in and you don't have any house payments. But most people aren't able to do that. Why? That's because banks won't allow people who are on welfare to actually get a loan, because the Fed and the country is running a hot inflationary rate. And so it's a circle. We're stuck in a loophole. We're stuck in a circle right now. The American public is stuck in this shithole of a mess that's been created by the private sector. The private sector is running the Fed. The Fed is running hot, trying to get inflation down. And the Fed is supposed to keep 100% jobs. So the Fed is actually violating the Constitution, or it's violating its own principles. I don't remember. I had a video I made of it the other day, but it said the Fed is actually supposed to have 100% employment. But the thing is, the Fed can't predict where jobs are going to come from or who's going to be working. So they set up the Fed for something that's not realistic. And so the Fed is running a hot inflation related to the central bank. So we have a central bank in the United States. The United States is not a central bank for the world. However, but when other countries and other entities are invited to buy into the United States stock market, then this means that other countries can put their money into the United States. They anticipate from certain companies of getting a return on their investment, not losing money. And I have to wonder if there's ones that are losing money right now, because I recall, I think it was maybe it has to be about 10 years ago, someone said something about that Iceland bought into a city in the United States, or they bought some stock or something in a city in the United States, and they almost lost everything gambling when they bought some, I don't know if it was dollar notes or what exactly it was, but they bought something through Wall Street. But see, now we have the same thing going on again. It seems like that there's other countries who are wanting to buy into the United States. Well, why does the United States allow this? That's what I'd like to know. And that's the same thing with like medical. Well, so then basically to me, what is with Wall Street, I would be pissed if I was a foreign country and I bought into something thinking that I was going to make money from it. So say that a foreign country buys into the affordable health care, which they can. Through Wall Street, they can. So they buy into something like that and then they lose money. Wouldn't you be a little bit pissed when you're buying into something and you think you're going to make money from it, but you end up losing money? Then it becomes gambling. It becomes a Ponzi scam when you lose money. So who wants to put money? I know me as an individual, and I feel that way right now with inflation. It's like, this is something I have absolutely no control over. Inflation. So basically it is a Ponzi scam. When you run a hot inflationary rate, it becomes a Ponzi scam. Elon Musk was right about that, and I've voiced that before too. Because think about this, when you're putting money into when you're paying into Social Security and Medicare, I believe if you're self-employed, you pay 12% for the employer part. For you pay double for paying into it when you're self-employed. Same thing with Medicare, because I think, what is it, 2.5 or 2.6% for Medicare? It's a small amount, but you're still paying. I don't know if you're paying more into it as the cost of living adjusts. Probably. I think we probably are paying more into it. But then as inflation continues, things get more expensive. That means you have less purchasing power with your dollar towards retirement, which then that's defunding it, which then it's true. It becomes a Ponzi scam upon the American people, because the private sector, and that through Wall Street, and the private sector, which is the Wall Street companies, which don't have a cap on their pricing, then that means they just raise prices. Then the American public has less purchasing power, because then the dollar has gotten more expensive over time. The cost of living has gotten more expensive over time. The dollar is devalued. And so we can't purchase as much, as our dollar doesn't go as far as what it did 50, 60, 70 years ago. We have a big problem. We literally have a great big problem right now. And I don't know what they're going to do to solve it. I've suggested that they can place a cap on, or they can just reset everything. And I don't know if they need to split the dollar somehow or put more liquidity in, and then they need to tell the private sector, no, you can't do this. You're not going to raise prices. You're going to be capped. So say that the American dollar was split into four. If they split it into four, so like stocks and bonds, stocks actually, Apple split itself into, its stock a multitude of times, so it makes it affordable so that people can buy into Apple all the time. Berkshire Hathaway, it's an example of a stock that is very expensive. I think it's probably like cryptocurrency in a way. So right now, cryptocurrency is, at times it flirts around $100,000, six figures up there. Berkshire Hathaway sometimes is what, $250,000, $300,000 a share. That's not something that the ordinary American public is going to be able to buy into with Berkshire Hathaway. So apparently it's never split. But I think Berkshire Hathaway it might be a brokerage company or a bundle of stocks, I think. I'm not sure I don't know that it's individual. So if you buy into Berkshire Hathaway, I don't know, maybe you can buy into it somehow as a fund, a mutual fund. If Berkshire Hathaway is but that's an expensive mutual fund though, if it's $300,000. I haven't looked lately to see how much Berkshire is, but the last I knew it was really expensive, and I think they had more than one, but they're very, very expensive. Now Apple, it split. Amazon also split, I believe. And so they were getting so expensive, they knew that if they didn't split, then people wouldn't be able to buy into them. The average ordinary Joe wouldn't be able to go and buy into any of these companies. So crypto, people can't buy into right now. You would have to be an institution to buy into crypto. Ordinary people can't buy into it, unless you're like a billionaire, and you want to buy one share of crypto, or one crypto, whatever it is, because it's expensive. It's the between the end of 2024, crypto was around 60,000, and I watched it go up over 100,000, and I think it's dropped back down to 90 the last I knew. That's not a stable coin, but even the American dollar is not stable. It's not stable because of the fact the private sector and Wall Street is devaluing the American dollar with inflation. And so I've explained it here multiple times. I've just said the American dollar is being devalued because the private sector is raising prices on purpose. I don't know what the Fed has to do with that, actually. The Fed exposes that things are expensive. So if the Fed could go down to zero and just be at zero, wouldn't that be better? But no, the private sector wants to make a bunch of money, and I don't know how the government can step in and control and take over the private sector in such a way, because they're like, oh, well, if you do that, you're hurting our business model. They have a hissy fit. They have a great big case of Trump derangement syndrome, and they have a big fit. Oh, you're going to hurt our business model. Well, you're scamming people. That's basically what your business model is scamming the American public. And so they have created a Ponzi scam right now. That's just my opinion. I see it like that. I don't see it any other way. They've created a Ponzi scam upon the American public with their inflationary tactics, because that devalues Social Security, that devalues Medicaid, Medicare, veterans pay, that devalues everybody's pay. So if so say a person they ask for $12 an hour for pay to be raised. So some people got that, while other people who maybe they make minimum wage didn't get a pay raise. But some corporations gave some people a raise up to, some up to maybe $25 an hour, but their pay is still getting devalued. Each year we have inflation year over year, and it goes up, and they just raise prices and make things more expensive. So so it's like, next thing you know, the millennials and the other generations are going to be asking for $50 an hour for minimum wage. Well, none of this is going to work. I'm not trying to be a negative Nancy. I'm just trying to tell the truth here, and not get annihilated for telling the truth. But it's not going to work. Um, Fixed income is fixed income. People get a tiny amount of a raise every once in a while. That doesn't mean that the private sector needs to. They're just purposely making things hard, and they're greedy. I mean, if you have billionaire companies, I don't think any company should be billionaire companies. Amazon is one to watch. Amazon and any of these media companies, these big mogul media companies, and things like that are ones to watch, because then they just get greedy, and they're even hurting their own employees though too. But now Amazon and a lot of these technology companies, they've just hired people. They're using gig workers. They've hired people outside of the United States. They've done a bunch of bad practices. They're not even creating jobs for the American public. And if we were able to do something, because I thought what I was doing with my original YouTube channel, I thought I was doing something of value because people wanted to watch it. And then there's a few who say that they don't. And it's like, okay, well, you know what? If you guys are going to play that game, I'm going to play the same game right back. I'm not interested in what you guys are doing either. I'm not going to watch you. So, two can play that game. So if you guys are, and I don't know what those companies are, I think it's the multi-channel networks or the exclusionary networks, because a lot of them seem to come out of California and Disney and the DEI garbage and stuff like that. And, so it's really unfortunate that they had to do things that way, because they were trying to favor themselves is what they were doing. So I think I'm going to end this at this point, because I've said enough about it. I've said enough about explaining Medicare time and time and time again, that the private sector raising prices on purpose is the whole reason that Medicare and Medicaid and welfare and everything is being defunded. So so someone can say that they're pulling the funding and not going to pay it. I think they have to. Every time they go to court, one of the judges says they have to pay it. They can't just deny people from benefits and things like that. But they have been. They have denied people. I know when I called up, and told them about my situation, they just denied me. And I asked for help, and, and they're like, well, yeah, but if you make this according to this, but yet they'll put other people onto Medicare and Medicaid. They'll help other people, but they wouldn't help me. And I think, so there is a lot of fraud in Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. That's just my opinion. I know they talk about it a lot of times, and they want people to think there's not fraud, and they'll say, well, if we do find it, it's very little. And so they will qualify it with that it's very little, which may or may not be true. I'm not sure. But I just think the people who put their friends on, they work for the government and they put their friends on, or they know of someone that needs help, or they'll give them a little wink wink. That's what I keep hearing about, is they know someone, they put them on and give them full benefits, and and then come to find out they shouldn't have been put on it or given the benefits. But at the same time, there's a whole bunch of other, affordable health care. What did it say? That 50 million people were placed, they had insurance they never had before. But it's just gone up and gotten more expensive too. But there's 85 million people who don't have insurance. So we still have a big problem that no one seems to want to solve. We have a big elephant in the room, a problem. No one wants to solve it. We've identified the problem. Who's going to fix it?